A long week, and we are all a little tired, but we would like to use this panel to talk again about the ideas that came out in Geneva or in Bologna or in the transfer from Geneva to Bologna. So the question to our panelists, and of course we're going to start from the ladies, is what is the single idea that you have learned, heard about in this week that really inspired you, and what can you draw out of that idea? How could you take it further? So starting from Ingunn, please.
Thank you. And I'm glad that so many are still here.
Me too.
Okay, yeah.
Me too.
Far away from the top.
Okay. Okay. So thank you for that challenge. And since it's late in the afternoon, I have some notes.
Okay.
So please forgive me. But there has been so many presentations. And when I saw this email from you in the morning, I was thinking, oh, how can we do this? So, but
select
I tried.
one.
Yeah, select one.
Difficult, yeah.
And I know Vlad wanted me to select him, but he is a king. So. But yesterday, I went to Geneva, and there were so many beautiful presentations, and I have been here. And yesterday, I was sitting there, and suddenly I felt that I was smiling, which is a good sign. I don't do that often. Well, I am. But there was this presentation from Libor Stepanek.
Stepanek, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I found that really inspiring.
I agree.
He talked about creative approach to language teaching, and just to remind you, his presentation was about how students learn language through collaborative tasks, lots of fun, and use of technology, like YouTube, internet, and, they solve different tasks. And since I am a leader of a cluster on technology, creativity, learning and technology at the University of Bergen-Slate, at the Faculty of Psychology, I am social-cultural, and I believe in that social co-construction of knowledge and dialogue. And then I started to wonder if could we use some of those thoughts and bring it into Slate. Vlad has a 20% position, so he's looking at me now. Support his, yes.
And 20% of
Yes.
20% of Vlad is a lot.
Yes. So can we actually make a project with, fun, collaboration, and, use technology? So we have people at Slate working with virtual reality, which is not my field, and perhaps some of the audience are, yeah. And I wonder if we could, in fact, do something with this and let students engage in different, collaborative tasks, and maybe work with societal challenges like SDG goals, etc. And actually, Vlad and I, we wrote an application a couple of years ago, and now I got inspired to look at this again. And I suggest that we set up a research project and we test your model with different perspectives. And if we could combine this with my research on interdisciplinary groups and the underlying conditions involved. I talked about openness, curiosity, and respect yesterday. But also, it's important to have lots of fun during interdisciplinary group work. And this is important to, get the group members to trust each other. And Roni, she had a really inspiring talk earlier today about psychological safety. I'm not going to talk about that now, but that is so important in interdisciplinary teams. So we could ask the students to imagine positions of others. And I think VR might be a good, place to try this. And I think that such computer-mediated activities and such virtual world platforms can offer this sort of research a unique venue for teaching and creative learning.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to underline that Ingunn said it's important to have a lot of fun,
Yes.
not a lot of funds. No? Okay, so but funds are important too. Roni, please.
So when I saw your email this morning, I went, for the same reason. So I'm going to break the rules. Sorry, being creative, taking a creative license, and I'm going to have a few mentions.
Okay.
Just very briefly.
That's fair.
So I was really inspired by Ben's talk, both here and in Geneva, particularly the interdisciplinarity aspect of it. I do interdisciplinary research myself. I research interdisciplinary teams. So this was fascinating to me and brought a different perspective to this notion of interdisciplinarity. I was curious about Sharma's work. I have to say that I need more information. I would love to see more information, but this whole notion of involving in AI to me is fascinating, in some ways very scary. And I think we need to do it right, but avoiding it is not going to help us. Tim's talk yesterday, I really like that pop-up concept, because really what it is it does bring design thinking into this with the prototyping and fast failure, and it's okay to, and saying to teachers it's okay to fail, right? Just try it. If you don't like it, we're not going to punish you. We're not going to hold you to it, which is an important concept in creativity, but one that organizations tend to ignore. The one that I want to spend a little bit more time on is actually a combination of two. So it started with Wendy's work both in Geneva and here, talking about serendipity, which is something I already liked. As Wendy mentioned in Geneva, I gave her this article of Bandura. As soon as I heard she does research on serendipity, this was something that I read when I was a graduate student a long time ago and really loved, one of those articles that stay with you. And I think this notion of serendipity and understanding chance events and what people make of them is very important. And she brought up an important point of how do we study it in the lab? And I think Sergio had a great example of a way we could study it in the lab. Because if you take these irrelevant objects, but you manage to make them relevant and use them, and you could vary to what degree they're relevant or irrelevant, the kinds of objects that people see, have multiple trials and see if people use objects, the irrelevant objects, on a regular basis, relate that to individual differences. I think you can have a nice mishmash there of a wonderful way of testing serendipity in a laboratory design, which is something that Wendy challenged us on trying to find. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now Roni covered a lot of ground, so it's going to be more and more difficult for the others. But Zorana, please.
So my reaction when I saw your email this morning was very similar, and I also decided...
I scared everyone.
Yeah,
I also decided to break the rules because we are in a creativity conference. If we don't do that, I don't know what we are doing.
that's why you sent it. You wanted us to break the rules.
So there we go.
We'll see about that.
I think, Giovanni, it might have been you who mentioned, maybe in Geneva, that was it Einstein who said that there isn't anything more practical than a good theory? Was that you who said that?
It was Vlad, I think.
Somebody said it. It starts being a blur after a while. And so I'm going to focus on the theory part of where we started and when we ended, and I think it's really a circle. So in Geneva, we started with discussing the sociocultural creativity manifesto. Where should we go in studying creativity? How should we get to it to really have a true knowledge, whatever true knowledge is, as an ideal? And we discussed from different perspectives of creativity being an action and building on previous and historical research, not abandoning it, but reinventing it and revisiting it. And then Todd yesterday gave us a new model with 7 C's, and I found that very inspiring, and I think it brings us kind of a full circle. I am not sure that I would have come up with the same 7 C's, but I still found it very useful as a tool and as an inspiration of thinking. So the 7 are just to remind you: the creator, creating, collaboration, context, creation, consumption, and curricula. And it was fascinating to me that that's where we started yesterday morning. And then all the following presentations kind of filled in these boxes.
Absolutely.
Almost all the boxes ended up being filled, and it made me start thinking, okay, where is my research, and which boxes are filled, which boxes I still need to fill. And it helped me in my thinking of what is still to problem find, as Roni was talking a lot about. So in the presentations here, we've heard about the process of creating in some substantial detail. So Mathias was talking about it from the neuroscientific point, and we learned a lot about attention from a number of people. And then Sergio, where is Sergio? Disappeared. There in the back. Then Sergio created this, connected creating with the creator. He talked about personality as a moderator there with the process of creating an attention. We heard a lot about collaboration from Roni, but also from the several sticky note people, which I thought was just lovely. And then it made me think of my own, and the curriculum people. Curriculum in a specific domain, as we've seen with the language domain and teaching language, but then completely interdisciplinary with Bam's presentation, reinventing what higher education for creativity is, and really starting from scratch, not putting band-aids into something that already exists, because we have done it this way since 1953. And then I thought about my own research and thinking of, okay, that relational component of creativity. Now I'm doing lots of research in the workplace and thinking how supervisors and I study emotions, so how their emotional intelligence skills and behaviors are influencing creativity of their employees, and they are in important ways. And how that tells us a different story than if we just look at abilities, the ability level. And one final note is we are here, and bring us back to where we started in Geneva. Creativity needs specification. I don't think that any of us should be almost even using the word creativity, but always saying what we mean by it. Is it creative thinking? Is it an aspect of creative thinking? Is it creative personality? Is it something else? Because if we just use that overall term, I know it is marketable, but if we are among ourselves, maybe we start thinking of what information we are conveying to.
Okay, thank you. So now the ladies have shot very high and set a very high level. Mathias, we come back from you then.
Okay. So yeah, this is indeed a big challenge to that I will not accept to select a single one. But I want to refer to what made me think a lot during the conference, and several talks addressed the topic of technology, and starting from Shama's talk on artificial intelligence and technology-assisted ideation processes. And I think this is just made me think a lot how that we shouldn't miss out on doing proper research on these societal changes that come with the massive permeation of technology in our everyday lives, and also how this relates to cognitive work on attention, memory, and control processes. Because on the one hand, of course, we see an enormous potential in these resources. We have all the knowledge at our fingertips. We have enormous ways of sharing our creative productions within seconds with the whole world. So there's a lot of potential for creators as well to use it. And on the other hand, of course, there's also risks associated, as you've already pointed out, like if you look at the role of attention, for example, if you look, consider our kids who sometimes find it hard to sit for seconds without just checking news on their smartphones. And so this technology also is a massive way or risk of getting into a passive consumption getting stimulated all the time, and which avoids or takes away time for thinking, for imagining maybe, because it gets potentially in a passive mode. And so I've talked about the role of the importance of internal attention for creativity, and this is gets us many of these technologies bear the risk also of getting us into an external mode where it just get passive a little bit. So I think we are challenged here to consider the cognitive roles and how to model this and how to make it fruitful technology while keeping in mind all the risks that are involved. And I see a huge potential for us to work on this, because we shouldn't miss out on this here, right?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you very much, Mathias. Vlad, please.
Yes, me again. Do we have to? No. So since we were confessing how we felt when we received Giovanni's email, I remember it was early morning and I said, love it. And then I thought about it. Now I'm here.
Not so much.
I have to choose. No, but I thought of making a meta kind of observation, just to say that for me the richness of the MIG conference especially, which has been the older conference of these, what they're doing today, is that we bring so many perspectives together. It's absolutely amazing. And if we stay for a moment and think of how many things we heard and how many from where people came to the topic of creativity, it's absolutely fascinating. And not only that we do that, but that we talk to each other and we like to be in the company of each other and exchange. I think that's really one of the biggest values of being in this community. I'm not going to go plot it into the model of the possible, but you make the links. It's very hard to choose a few papers. I will say what for me, I don't know if it is the future of the field. I would love to be part of that, what I'm talking about. But one of the things that really inspired me the most was to see many people pick up on what I call relational concepts. So Wendy was mentioned with serendipity, then we had affordances, Marlois was talking about that, dialogue with Ingunn, Asdrubal talked about purpose, and I think these are kinds of concepts that look both ways, as it were. You cannot study them only at an individual level, you cannot study them only within the environment. And I think one of the biggest challenges, at least for me, it has always been to try to develop a more relational language, a way in which creativity, we do justice to the fact that it is a system. And a system is not only elements put together, but it's actually the relationships that transform those elements. So for me, it's really inspiring to see that it seems like a new vocabulary is kind of emerging, and I'm very hopeful that kind of vocabulary will influence our methods and our thinking and kind of lead us to more and more complexity. And a special mention, it's not like I'm listing them, but I was really inspired also by Tim's talk and the ways in which I could see, probably for the first time for me, how the science of creativity and doing rigorous, passionate work can come to impact actual schools and then governments potentially, because the whole idea is to present it back to policymakers, because this for me has always been a big question. So what and what next? So that was really, really great to see everything come together. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. And James. Now James will come up with different things.
I have an old thought and a new thought. I will do my old thought first. I tend to walk this delicate balance of hope and caution, where I assume that nothing will turn out in the end, but I act as though it might. And two of the talks had moments that I connected. One was Shama's, as other people have now mentioned, amazing display of AI art, computers making art. Another was Vlad's discussion of the Twitter space, that was what he used. And the potential for both, which can be amazing, The idea that on Twitter you can reach out to so many people who think differently than you. The idea of computers changing everything. And then that balance between hope and caution where, I mean, it apparently turns out that on Twitter you just listen to the same people. I mean, on Facebook, I've blocked every single person who I find annoying. Muted, not blocked, so they don't know. Because I find they still like my posts, which means they definitely don't know. And the same way, as striking as the art was, there was also a certain uncanny valley creepiness. I will likely have terrible nightmares about this tonight. And wondering with vaguely detached amusement, I suppose, because by the time it actually comes to pass, I'll probably be dead, but my kids are screwed. You know, how will these newly available, nearly available tools derived from our creativity, which way will the wind blow in terms of how they are used? I am quite curious. My newer idea, why no Leonardo? It's the same reason why it's really damn hard to go last. He was 500 years ago. There have been 500 years of all sorts of like inventions and stuff like that. I am not saying you can't invent more, but I think the amount of domain knowledge needed to reach that big sea level multiple times, it'll still happen. People still do it. I mean, I'd put Ben Franklin not up there, but pretty high. I'd put Paul Robeson pretty high. Yeah. But the same reason why I realized, wow, by the time that I'm going to go, everything I say is going to be notably less interesting.
We don't agree. But,
those are my two insights.
Thank you very much. So now, let's hear from you, the audience. You want to add anything, ask questions to our fabulous panel, comment, whatever you feel like. Who wants to break the ice? Ben. Me? Yes. She didn't ask for it, but...
I think that the idea of safe spaces comes to mind. And in the pedagogy we use, there is you need a lot of trust to do this collaboration. You need communication with union at the center of that word to bring people together and ideas together and countries together like we have here. But the idea of safe spaces, we actually have challenged that in our university, and we talk of brave spaces. And it's categorically different from safety. And I think that a lot of the major changes that need to happen actually have to happen in a brave space. And we need more bravery, more courage. And I heard a nice definition, I think at this conference, actually from one of your colleagues I had lunch with from International Relations in Webster. And he gave me a Maya Angelou definition of courage, which was the ability to follow your values consistently. And I think that changing the world requires that kind of bravery. That's my comment, but I love the idea.
We all want to change the world. Wendy, how would you change the world?
What I wanted to ask the panel was there seemed to have been a lot of questions about methodology and a massive range of methodology from ethnography through to alpha wave. I didn't understand any of the alpha waves. I just saw alpha males banging. That's all I saw in my head. But from the alpha males waving around in the corner through to ethnography, through the whole thing. Do you see that a field with that many diverse methodologies can actually hold together? That was one of my questions.
Okay, who wants to take that question? Do we have too many methodologies, or is it an integrated? You have to pull it?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. No.
Can you hear me? No, you can't. Okay. So first of all, I would refer everybody to this wonderful special issue from PACA that just came out that I was very lucky to be the co-editor of. Talks about methodologies and the variety of methodologies. I think creativity is a complex phenomenon. And I go back to what Zorana said, in terms of we need to be specific about what it is that we're talking about when we say creativity, because what we're finding from measurement is that not all measures get us the same results. So at this point, in terms of our knowledge, and because it's such a complex phenomenon, I think the field is richer because we use different methodologies. As long as people are clear on what it is that we're measuring, how we go about measuring it, and then each of us as a researcher can say, okay, this is where it fits with my framework and my work, and here's the stuff that doesn't make it bad, it doesn't make it not important, it just makes it irrelevant to my current work and my current way of thinking.
And specific, yes.
Yes.
Please take the microphone there.
You need to open it.
You have to open it up.
Yeah, it's open.
It's open? Okay. I very much agree with what Roni said, and I think we need to use multiple methodologies because different methodologies are going to give us open windows to different things. Like, I study emotions, and I was for a long time frustrated with the study of emotions because I didn't think in creativity, because I didn't think it was getting to the experience of creativity in the real world, as the experimental paradigm, which is dominant in psychology, studies creativity with very short tasks in the laboratory. Under those circumstances, you get one answer, but if you go out in the real world, you get a different and much more complex answer. That's why I think we need to study both. Just for 1 second, because I cannot resist, I would like to address something that Bam said.
Yes. You have the power to do that.
That I found, and it comes back to the manifesto. So we come back in circles. In the concept of bravery, I actually have a study that I'm writing up right now that gets a little bit to that concept. And lots of people do not feel brave enough because of concerns about evaluation, thinking they're going to be perceived as silly or as out of their place and such. And it has consequences of what they do, what they share, and what they do. But as Giovanni was talking in terms of Leonardo, but that's not unique to Leonardo. Even if you look at contemporary entrepreneurs, currently I'm very interested in entrepreneurs. So I think they're fabulous. Go, Shama. So when you hear interviews with entrepreneurs, the question that comes up over and over again is people have told them that it's impossible what they intend, or that it's silly, or that it's stupid, but they just go on, and they are not that they don't care necessarily, but they do it in spite of it. And this is not necessarily a new finding. Way back 50 years ago, 60 years ago, in the 1960s, Frank Barron found something that he called independence of judgment, that creative individuals are less influenced by these, no, you cannot do it, no, it's impossible. And it might be time to revisit that concept and study it in more detail. Invitation.
Okay. Thank you very much. Tim?
I think it's always good to finish with a provocation when everyone's tired. Working in the field of education, it seems extremely odd to me that the field of creativity is 70 years old. If I look at the panel in front of me, there are hundreds and hundreds of publications, and yet the definitions of creativity written by education authorities around the world don't mention any of you. And I find that really, really weird. They have to, that's a broad sweeping generalization for which I apologize, but the fact that a guy with a really popular TED talk is influencing world education when he's done no research, I'm just wondering how the field, and I'm looking at great representatives of the field here, how can we push back against this consultancy-led definition of creativity in world education?
Who wants to reply to that?
Sorry.
Wait.
If we knew, we would
physical
have done
force,
it.
if necessary.
No, I don't think we got the answer. So, Zorana first, and then.
No, just a silly, it's not an answer. It's if we knew, we would have done it.
Yeah.
Apparently, we don't know how to do it.
And James, what did you say?
I've already turned off the mic.
Yeah, it's on.
By physical force, if necessary.
Roni.
So I'm going to say something that maybe addresses it a little bit better than that. So as an organizational psychologist, I always try to think about the practical implications. And I see part of my job as going out and talking, not necessarily to the education folks because they don't listen to me, but I'm finding that businesses are starting to listen. And if you hit the right people, and if you get, all you need is a few, and it starts to propagate from there. I would like to challenge all of you to take it back and do your work too. I think the more of us that are out there that talk about creativity from, no, this is not squishy. Yes, we can measure it. Yes, it's meaningful. Yes, we can study it in the lab. Yes, we can study it in the field. The more of us that are out there, the more other people will be educated. So make it your personal mission. So I'm going to challenge you right back.
Okay. Any other questions or provocations? Seems that we don't have any more, so let's thank our beautiful, fantastic panel.